situation.
He's done it.
Returns to Australia.
Hello everybody and welcome to our podcast called Road to the Ashes. This is episode 4. I've got Kerry O'Keefe alongside me. Skull, great to have you for this one.
Terrific to be with you, Beach.
Looking forward to this one because our very special guest today, he has been an absolute legend right around the world and he's regarded as England's greatest ever all-rounder. Besides being one of the legends of the sport, Beefy as he is affectionately known, is one of the great characters, and there have been few players who could dominate a test more than him. And we can't wait to relive some of those magical moments in his career, and in particular, the magical series back in 1981. And we're great to have him on board because we've, in the middle of his fishing expedition up there in Scotland, Sir Ian or Lord Botham, Beefy, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. How are you going?
Very well, BJ, thank you. And enjoying myself, a little bit of relaxation. Weather's great, and we're nearly out of lockdown. What more could you want?
Now, exactly right. So you're Sir Ian Botham. Do we call you Lord Botham now? You're a member of the House of Lords?
Yeah, but Beefy will do. That's fine.
Hey, mate, have you made your maiden speech yet?
Yes, done that. Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. I said when I went in that I would represent the countryside and the people of the countryside, and that's what I intend to keep on doing. It's exciting actually in many ways. You can actually have an influence, which is quite nice, however small that influence is. But it's nice to be sort of up to speed with what's going on, and then having an opportunity to discuss it and vote on it.
And the waterways of England have long been a passion of yours, haven't they? Given that you're an enthusiastic fly fisher. Fly fishing has kept you sane, you've often said. Could you explain?
It has, yeah. It has. When you have to share a dressing room with some of the characters that I have over the years, and home and away, I think you've got to have a passion, and whatever it is. I know a lot of the guys, different guys, I enjoy a game of golf, but for me, fishing is special. Whether it's fly fishing on the rivers, beautiful up here. We're up here in Speyside, which is right up in the north east of Scotland, and it's quite stunning. You stood there in a pool, fishing down a long pool, maybe 100 yards on the river, and then suddenly you snap out of that wonderful no man's land that you seem to spend most of your time in your mind and just fishing and switching everything down. Then suddenly 2 or 3 deer will swim across in front of you, and that wakes you up. And it's an amazing. So whether it's river fishing or sea fishing, I'm pretty much game for it. Give me the opportunity. I can't get out there quick enough.
Oh, very good, mate. Well, let's talk a little bit of cricket, Kerry, because Test match England taking on New Zealand at Lords. First one's up and running. Finished in a draw. Some say that might have been a bit of a non-event, given the fact that maybe England could have gone and maybe tried to win it. They had a bit of rain around as well. How'd you see that first Test match?
Look, lost a full day to rain. A funereal overrate didn't help. In the end, Kane Williamson set them a gettable target. They had 3 batsmen on pairs. There was a bit of up and down in the deck. Joe Root chose not to chase. Draw was a fair result. Pluses for England, Rory Burns. Could be the fly in the ointment for Australia. The blueprint to beat Australia at home is for somebody to soak petrol out of the Australian fast bowlers. That's what Rory Burns does. That's his DNA, big player, next December.
Ian, first Test match at Lords. Great to see a Test match up and running in England. As I said, it finished in a draw. How'd you see it over there?
Look, I think most people over there feel that England could have given it a bit more of a go. People over here have been waiting now for, 16, 17 months to go back to live Test cricket and be able to go and see it at the stadium. I thought England could have given it a bit more of a go. There was no real intent from the start. Once you get to, say, 30 or 40 without losing a wicket, then I thought they could push on a bit. It's going to be very difficult to bowl. If you lose 5 wickets, 6 wickets, you'd think that your middle order could bat it out for 15 overs, 20 overs. But yeah, a little bit negative for me. I think there was a chance there. I thought it was a very sporting declaration. I don't think anyone saw that coming. And it's a little bit the way the New Zealanders play the game though now. Since Brendon, I think, was a very aggressive captain, and played every time to win. I remember that declaration at Adelaide when he thought, well, the ball's going to do a bit at night, and he nearly got Australia or New Zealand over the line, and Australia beat him, but Australia hung on and won a great Test match. But I thought England could have just been a bit more positive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're missing a couple of players, Skull. I mean, you've got Ben Stokes, Jofra Archer in that side as well. Two key players that they will be on their way to Australia at the end of their summer there. So that's two players coming back in that they need to manage in, don't they?
Oh, they do. Ben Stokes will be a big player. He wasn't here in 17-18. Australia won 4-0, BJ, as you remember. But Stokes, with the bat and with the ball, is pivotal, as is Jofra Archer, of course. Gets the ball to stand up off a length. He'll rough up Steve Smith. If you can rough up Steve Smith, get Warner out cheaply, that's you go a long way to beating Australia at home.
Beefy, no Stokes, no Jofra Archer. I mean, they're two key players that they need out here in Australia if they want to win the Ashes, don't they?
You've got to bring a pace attack to Australia, I think. I'm not sure what the wickets will be like, but one thing is for sure that Australia will come at them with pace, and I think that England have some guys, young guys coming through that I think will be if I was selecting that side, I'd be looking at, you'd want Archer fit. He's just having a bit of sabbatical, I think, getting this elbow sorted out. And I think he's targeting the T20 World Cup and the Ashes. I think that's pretty much what Ben Stokes is doing. Yeah, they're both key players. I think we're hoping Ben's going to play for Durham around about the 20th this month.
Hey, what about Jimmy Anderson, Beefy? I mean, 162 Test matches. Can you ever believe a fast bowler playing that many Test matches? Just unbelievable.
Well, I think he's on course for about 250 the way he's going, but he is quite remarkable. I mean, he's looked after himself. I can remember, if you go right the way back to when he first started playing, I remember in South Africa, I think it was, they tried to change his action. And luckily, Jimmy said, whoa, stop, hang on. The reason you picked me is the way I bowl and how I bowl. And he went back to bowling. And they said, well, you're not looking at where you're bowling. You know, your head's falling down here. He said, all I can say is it's a good job he couldn't see where he was going. But no, he's been magnificent. He's kept himself fit. He's pretty much kept himself injury-free. He's had a few little niggles, but you'd expect that. You know, he's a lot closer to 40 than he is 35.
Well, yeah, exactly right. I mean, Skull, they're going to have to manage that, aren't they? They're going to make sure. Can you see him playing 5 Test matches, Jimmy Anderson, here in Australia?
I don't think he will. He'll be 39. I think management may say to him, I'm interested in Beefy's opinion on this, win us the Adelaide Day-Nighter, as you almost did last time, and the Melbourne Test when it seems around on day one. They're your 2 briefs. Jofra Archer, Mark Wood, Ollie Stone can take care of the bouncing pitches, Brisbane and Perth. I think they'll strategise a squadron of fast bowlers and pick horses for courses. Jimmy Anderson for the pink ball day night, and MCG if there's a bit of cloud cover.
Will they do that, Ian?
I think that's pretty much. I think Scully's pretty spot on there. I think you've got to do it like that. You've got a guy who's going to be 39. You can't expect him to play in every Test. Mind, if he gets on a roll and he starts taking wickets, he'll want to play. But then you've got another problem. Yeah, I think they'll manage it. I think they'll look. Certainly Adelaide, they'll want to play their day-night game. Melbourne, yes, or tends to do a bit on the first day. Yeah, I think you'll have to do it that way. Jofra Archer, you might have to look after him a bit as well. So let the young guys, the young guns come running in and pounding in with lots to prove and lots of ambition. But then you keep your big guns, keep your gunpowder dry. Ben Stokes, he'll hopefully be fit. He's got a nasty finger break, but that's coming on really well. He's been in the nets for the last couple of weeks or 10 days. So he's well on the road and he's keen and chomping at the bit. You can imagine Ben Stokes would be like a caged lion. He wants to get out there and play. So, yeah, I think they'll definitely have to do that, and they will do that in Australia. They'll manage the bowlers. Also, spin will have a big part to play, but that's one of the problem areas for, I think, most countries at the moment, lack of really good spin bowlers.
And it's delighted the doesn't bother looking at it. He just swats it away like as though he is smashing a fly.
Well, that one didn't. Lily's there. It's cleared him over the ropes. What a magnificent way to go to a 6. What a superlative exhibition this has been. And the whole of Old Trafford rising to its feet to acclaim yet another memorable, magnificent performance from Ian Botham.
Well, one of the great things with our podcast is we get to relive some of the magical moments in some magical series, and in particular that one there, 1981, where England were right under the gun. They'd lost the first Test match, Kerry. They ended up winning it 3-1 and they retained the Ashes. For me, and for my mind, one of the great Ashes series ever.
It was. And there was a vision of Ian Botham swatting Dennis Lillee without a helmet off his nose for 6. I'd wear a helmet going drinking with Dennis Lillee.
Ian, can I ask you straight off the top, was it a series that changed your life?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It also, there was a lot of circumstances in England at that stage. You had the race riots. Bristol was on fire. Toxteth. There was a lot of trouble. They had the miners' strike. There was the country was pretty much down its knees a bit at the time, and along came this. It just changed my life, but I think actually it brought everyone else out as well. The country suddenly woke up, and I think it was just fate. I think really, it just one of those things. I'd been started the series, and it wasn't the greatest start of a series for me, and then I resigned as captain. Some would say not soon enough, but to be quite honest, I think looking back on it, when you're 24 and someone comes to you and says, "I want you to captain the England side," well, you don't really say no, do you? It's it's the pinnacle of your career. It doesn't get much higher than that. So with hindsight, maybe it was a couple of years too soon, but everything with hindsight's very easy. It changed my life, and it was great though. Those days, everyone wanted some excitement, something positive, and the crowds were amazing. And not so much at Edgbaston in an earlier game. They actually took 4 or 5 wickets for me. The crowd, just with the atmosphere. And it was pretty remarkable.
The guy that replaced you as skipper, Mike Brearley, Beefy, you played so much good cricket under him. What was it about Breers?
Well, I think the best way, I think a few cricketers have worked him out quite quickly, and he's basically a little bit like, if you're a Star Trek fan, Spock. He basically looks inside your head and decides, finds the weak points, strengths. He was almost, it was quite freaky, really. He seemed to know when to change the bowling. He knew he talked everyone up. He got the best out of the players. You wanted to play for him. You roll that all up. I mean, nowadays he probably wouldn't even get a start because they'd say, well, he's not a good enough batsman, and he would not. Therefore, England would miss out on his captaincy skills. He was very special. But I still see him now occasionally, and I often ask him when he looked in my eyes, what did he see? And as he's pointed out, I didn't look for very long, did I?
Can I ask you also, you lost the first Test match at Trent Bridge. Australia won that Test match. Going into Lords, you had a pair at Lords. Walking off, and there was the silence of the members at Lords. Was that a point in your life, or that time when you thought, you know what, I don't want this captaincy? They didn't give it to me only on a match basis. Was that a turning point, when you walked off the ground then?
Well, I wasn't happy with this situation where you're getting the captaincy game by game. There's nothing for me to work with, nothing for the team to work with, and everything was in the air. So I was close to it, but I think the icing on the cake was that walk off the ground in the second innings. Because I went out there to try and I said, we'll have a bit of a go, boys, see if we can get a few runs and see if we can just put Australia under a bit of pressure. And I got out to Ray, Brighty, Candles, and as I was walking off the field, I thought, wow, this is weird. This is really weird. And they didn't have a clue what I was trying to do. Walked off, and up came the newspapers, and up came the magazines, and the people are looking at the shoes, and it's so stony silence. So I thought, well, it is time to go, and I resigned straight after the game.
And Kerry, Australia won the first Test match. The second Test match was drawn. They would have been feeling pretty confident. The Aussies had a pretty gun attack. Alderman was on debut. I mean, he took 9 wickets on debut in his first Test matches, and Lilly bowled well at Lords, so they were well on trot, the Aussies, weren't they?
Oh, with Lilly, Lawson and Alderman in your attack and leading, you have to think we're going to win this series. But IT Botham had a bit to say about that.
He did. Well, Beefy, let's talk about Headingley. I want to ask you the question. Was Bob Willis, why was he not selected in the first 2 Test matches? And was he under an injury cloud? And was it all about Mike Brearley who got him back in the side?
Pretty much. He wasn't going to play in that game at Headingley. And Breers, I think Breers rang him up and said, what are you doing? How are you? Are you fit? And he said, well, that's why I'm not playing for Warwickshire in this game. I want to make sure I'm fit for the Test at Headingley. He also had no ball problems, and that was going against him. The selectors weren't happy with that, but luckily Mike Brearley had a gut feeling and said, no, we're going to play him. Told the selectors I want him, and I think Mike Hendrick was the guy that missed out, and along came that just amazing. I mean, 8 for 43 off 15.3 overs or something. Non-stop. The guy was, when he got a wicket, he sort of gave Bobby's little cheer like that, sort of looked at her, then turned and went straight back. It was quite a long walk to where he started bowling from, to be fair. And he went all the way up the back of the slope at Headingley. Up he goes. And by the time he just stood there waiting for the next batsman, just looking. And he was so fixed with just performing. And I think he wanted to make sure that he didn't let Breers down. And he came in. It was one of the most amazing sustained pace bowling efforts for a long, long time from a guy who's genuinely quick. And people forget that. Genuinely quick. And to come back and bowl a spell like that was, well, quite amazing. But it really just, Bobby sadly no longer with us. But there's not a day that something doesn't flash through your mind with Bob Willis. If you got to know him, he was an amazing character. And that summed him up, actually, determined. And he came steaming in. And it was a great sight. Well, for us, not probably for the Australian batsman, but he came in and he was quick and aggressive. And also, the guys caught well. Everything was taken. Nothing was put down. And that's the kind of support a quick bowler wants, and Bob got it.
You're having reunion dinners, the 40th reunion. 2 key players, both gone, as you say, Bob Willis and Graham Dilley, 2 of your besties. You'll raise a glass to them, I'm sure, Beef.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, most days I raise a glass to Bobby, to be honest. Every time, we spent so much time together. It was a very special friendship. We shared the new ball together for, I think, 60 odd tests, something like that. Took 400, nearly 500 wickets between us. So that's a relationship that's quite special. And, we spent a lot of time together off the field. I used to get Bobby always seemed to end up being my golfing partner. We didn't win many, but we had a good laugh. But, Bobby, it was, special times, special friendships, they come along, and that's one of them. And
Botham wines are a passion of yours today. Bob Willis shared that passion. John Arlott introduced you to wine. In fact, what was his comment when you introduced him to our Penfolds Grange? He said, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, exactly. I actually took it over. We had a house on Alderney in Channel Islands and John was just up the road. And the reason we went to Alderney because of a friendship with John and going back many, many years, going back to when I was 16. And I took him this over, and it was, we had a good age on it. It was a good vintage. There's not really a bad vintage of Grange, is there? But he said, not bad. And that was it. And I thought, okay, well, you won't be wanting that then, John, so I'll take that one back with me. But no, he was a remarkable guy, John Arlott, and anyone that was lucky enough to spend time with him realised just how special a person he was. But he was in those days. I used to go up to the house in the mornings, and I had to be there by 9:04 because the phone went at 9:02 when I'm 2 minutes down the road. And John would come on the phone and he'd go, "What time are you arriving?" And I'd say, "Right, well, when do you want me, John?" He said, "No, would be good." And I'd get up to the house, and the first thing on the doorstep every morning, there was anything between a case of 6 to 2 or 3 cases of wine waiting. And the French sent it over to him. And he was the only guy in those days, I believe, English person, who was allowed to actually write in French magazines about their food and wine.
Wow. So
I used to every morning. So you were ducking wine bottles from about 9:30 in the morning.
Gee.
And the cellar had to bring up what he wanted to taste for lunch, and he always had a nice lunchtime with John. And he was a remarkable guy, amazing guy. And at the end, with emphysema, even at the end, he would a couple of sentences would say more than most people could write a book about. He's quite a remarkable man. But his love of wine and good food was second to none.
Mate, I've got to ask you about your 149 night out, but your great partnership there with Graham Dilley in that that match when you had to follow on. I mean, what was Lilly and Alderman and Kim Hughes and these guys saying to you? I mean, they spread the field. They had 5-6 slips and a third man and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I just want to know, were they scratching their head thinking, hang on, this possibly can't be going on?
I think when I first went in, they were quite happy. Playing a few shots. It wasn't a great pitch, let's be honest. And you go out there, and there's a few like that inside edges. It was a little surreal. Picker came out, and he came up to me and he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Look, mate, it's not a great wicket. Let's have some fun." And exactly what he did. He played like Graham Pollard. One and only time, and he smashed 50 odd, and he played shots. And I remember he hit Dennis Lilly on the up through the offside and smashed it for 4. And Dennis just scratched his head. And actually, they didn't say a lot, actually, the Aussie boys, which is unusual.
And I understand on the last day they had the champagne chilling in their room, and you had to negotiate getting the champagne off them.
We had a young guy actually called Ricky Roberts, who was the dressing room attendant, and he was about 14 or 15, and a great lad. He came over from South Africa, and Ricky Roberts went on to be quite famous in his own right because he caddied for Ernie Els to 2 or 3 of these majors, and so I got on very well with Ricky. And at the end of the innings, of course, all the champagne on the ground was in the Aussie dressing room in the bath. So I said to Ricky, young naive lad, I said, "Ricky, just go and knock on the door." And if you remember the old Headingley dressing rooms, the doors were opposite each other. And he knocked on the door, and I said, "When you knock on the door, just say, look, you don't need the champagne. Can the England boys get some?" And he came back through the door horizontal. There was, I can see there was Bacchus and Ray Bright stood there. I think they just launched him through the door.
But what about, Beefy, what about that? I mean, there was a rest day and you had a barbecue at your house on the Saturday night, and you checked out of the hotel on the Monday. What were you telling everyone? What were you telling Kath, your wife?
Well, I just said I'll be back. We're up to here in it. That we're probably going to get done. And so checked out the hotel, and suddenly then we had to check back in. And luckily they'd kept our rooms. And we checked back in. But the barbecue was an interesting evening. That was very good. And that's probably where we won the test match, if I'm honest, because I think we won the scrum down in the marquee at about whatever time it was in the morning. And we lived in a little sleepy village called Epworth, and the 4X bus came down the main street of Epworth and turned a few heads, and then the boys all traipsed off with a few beers on the shoulder and what have you. And it was a great night. But those days, they've sadly gone, because one of the great things about playing international cricket was at the end of the day, you'd be in your dressing room and you'd been out in the field, and the Aussie boys would come in, and you'd have a few beers, you'd have a chat, and you didn't need match referees in those days, because everything, if there was a problem, it was sorted out there and then. So, but equally, you learned so much as a young player, just listening and sitting there with the likes of Dennis Lilly, Rod Marsh, Greg Chappell. You're listening to these guys and joining in the conversation when you had something worthwhile to offer. But most of the time, you sat there and enjoyed a beer at the end of the day's play, and enjoyed listening to those guys. So, and you made friendships that will go on forever. And I'm not sure that happens so much now.
I always remember that shot of you and Bob Willis on the balcony after the Test match getting interviewed. I mean, did you feel vindicated there? I know Bob had a bit of a swipe to the journalists and all that. I mean, did you feel like, we've paid it back now and we're going to go on and win this series?
Yeah, I think, look, by then I think the Aussies didn't quite know what hit them. I think there was, they weren't the happiest bunch at that stage because various things, but I think they lost a couple of games that they thought they should win in that series. And by the end of the Old Trafford game, it was all over really. But it wasn't in score-wise, but as a contest. But I felt a bit for Kim Hughes in that series because I thought he probably didn't get as much support as he should have had. But that wasn't our problem, so we were quite happy for it all to carry on. But look, Bobby, there should have been, if there was going to be 2 man of the matches ever in a Test match, Bobby Willis should have got the medal for 8 for 43. It was quite remarkable. At one stage, he had a towel round like he was gagged and just walked past the press and went like.
But Peter West, you gave an interview the night before and said another 30 or 40 will make the game interesting. You added 5 that morning, and you were asked, and you said it made it even more interesting, and it was enough to win by.
Well, when you think Australia were 50 for 1, and most people would have thought, well, that's it, it's all over. But we got a couple of quick wickets, and the rest is history, as they say. But it was a strange series. It was a great series from England's point of view, but it must have been very frustrating for Australia.
Well, Sir Ian, we really appreciate your time. We look back on that and we often see that 1981 series and probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. We've seen 2005, but appreciate your time. Thanks for interrupting your fishing expedition up there. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you out here in Australia for this coming Ashes series.
I'll be there one way or another. I just hope that I don't have to do 2 weeks in a shoebox, but... we've all had our vaccinations over here. I had it quite a while back, and the immune levels are very high. So I'm hoping that if vaccinations worldwide improve, and in England we've done over about 75% of the whole country. So we're very close to total freedom and movement, which will be great, and the world can get back to some form of normality. Just got to be honest with you, one thing we've discovered over here is you're never going to be COVID free. You just got to learn to live with it. Yeah, well said, well said. Thanks for your time. And Kerry, thanks for your time. Really enjoyed that 1981 series. And thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And a reminder that you can subscribe to the Road to the Ashes podcast on your favourite podcast provider. We'll see you next time.